All right, it's 6 o'clock. It's showtime, everybody. Good evening, friends and neighbors, and happy Earth Day. I'd like to welcome you to the Smith Mountain Lake Association Spring Webinar. I understand a few of you have been asking questions about video and audio because you're used to a Zoom meeting. This is a webinar, and it only has the ability to receive. So you will see me and hopefully hear me. And we'll be doing some questions later on. I'll talk to you about that in a bit. So I'm John Rupnick, the president of Smith Mountain Lake Association. And welcome to the Smith Mountain Lake Association Spring Webinar for SMLA members and residents of Smith Mountain Lake. What more appropriate to celebrate Earth Day than to discuss the merits of and actions taken and planned by the Smith Mountain Lake Association to help protect our piece of Mother Earth. Today, I'd like to explain to you the value proposition for the Smith Mountain Lake Association. In essence, why you should continue to support Smith Mountain Lake Association with your membership and/or your time. I want to tell you some of our significant accomplishments over the years, and more recently, I also want to tell you why you should care. That will be the takeaway for this presentation. I'll present an overview of our ongoing projects and their plan forward. Then I'll open the floor for questions using chat, as I mentioned earlier. With your mouse, just click the chat button at the bottom of your screen, mouse it over, and ask your question to our panel members who are on the phone or on the screen with me. You may ask a question via chat at any time during the presentation, and we'll repeat and answer the questions as long as we have the time at the end. My project directors who are with me here this evening will respond to the questions. I promise that this should last no more than an hour, so let's get started. 51 years ago, SMLA was born out of a boaters association. Over the years, many environmental issues needed a larger voice and wider scope to develop solutions that were favorable to the water quality of Smith Mountain Lake. Our membership consists of families and individuals, business partners and stakeholders who provide financial support and volunteer their time. All of them share the passion that we have for protecting the water of Smith Mountain Lake and promoting safe recreation. Smith Mountain Lake Association is the only organization on our lake whose mission includes protecting the water of Smith Mountain Lake. I want to share with you our core values with you today as listed. They're pretty straightforward and directly relevant to our mission. I'd also like you to consider helping us spread the word about the good work SMLA does for our watershed. This can be as simple as having a brief conversation with a neighbor about our various initiatives. Take a look at our major successes over time. They happened in response to a significant stressor placed on our lake. In the 70s, our nation's environmental focus was recognition that our nation's rivers were highly polluted. SMLA was born, and in the 80s, SMLA made strides to improve sewage treatment and effluent from the wastewater treatment plants. Initial steps were taken to formalize monitoring for the water and removing debris. In the 90s, SMLA dealt with increasing sedimentation from shoreline development and worked to remove or lower phosphorus in garden fertilizers. During the 2000s, we spent significant time in discussions with AEP regarding its new shoreline management plan. Specifically, we debated how to promote the portions of the plan that actually improve water quality while eliminating those parts that were unnecessarily burdensome or which did not contribute to improve water quality. With increasing population and boat traffic, water safety became similarly important to our residents. Over time, SMLA took on multiple safety-related issues. Boaters wanted to navigate safely and find their way from one end of this 22,000-acre lake to the other, and find communities within the 550 miles of shoreline more easily, hence the map. The Smith Mountain Lake Association's Water Safety Council emerged as the go-to water safety organization and urged the creation of the Marine Volunteer Fire and Rescue Organization. Additional boat traffic and the emergence of personal watercraft caused a marked increase in boating accidents. Based on accident reconstruction, the injection of these new vessels and their owners' lack of experience on these craft demanded a course of instruction for PWC operators. Increased law enforcement followed then. Prudent actions to prevent boating accident and personnel loss were always in the forefront. Okay, I've told you who we are, what we do, and why we do it, how we do it. But so what? Why should you care? First of all of SMLA's projects are designed to support the mission to protect the water of Smith Mountain Lake and promote safe recreation. What else is more important when living at the lake? The mission exists to preserve the lake's natural beauty and provide a safe environment. SMLA success fosters a vibrant economy. Businesses thrive and home sale prices flourish. Should either of these two elements of our mission fail to be achieved, the lake's popularity will diminish, businesses will falter, home values will decline. What you and your neighbors do to sustain or improve water quality and operate boats safely will have a direct impact on the value of your home. It will improve resale potential. On the other hand, if our actions degrade water quality or cause unsafe conditions, we can only guess what will happen to our lake and property values. The bottom line is that SMLA helps you protect your waterfront investment. I would now like to talk about projects. We execute our strategy through a series of projects, normally organized around a problem area or stressor that we experience on the lake. I will explain how we select and work to solve those issues. Over the years, Smith Mountain Lake has been subjected to a variety of stressors that have had an impact on the quality of water and/or the safety of boaters and swimmers. SMLA responds to the highest priority stressors when developing our project profile. These projects are described in our strategic plan that is updated periodically. All projects are reviewed routinely to assess renewal potential. Key to running any project is obtaining proper leadership. SMLA doesn't have the means to hire project managers that are fluent in the topic at hand, but our members and residents often have some of this experience. The SMLA Board of Directors is a collection of mostly retirees like myself who love the lake and want to pass on a piece of heaven down to their grandchildren and have the experience and drive to manage a project. What they don't know, they learn. What they can't learn, they fill in by using collaborators like Ferrum College for the Water Quality Monitoring Program, or expertise from the Department of Wildlife Resources. Of course, without sufficient funding, projects, even great projects, can go fallow. SMLA is blessed to have a few wonderful sponsors that help fund our priority projects, but due to insufficient funding, some great projects go unfunded or minimally funded, such as our invasive species effort. We do what we can regardless, in spite of the shortcoming. This is why your continued contributions and membership renewals are so important. It is clear that SMLA needs to educate our lake population on the stressors and actions in response related to water quality and safe recreation. The more we understand, the more we can protect the water of Smith Mountain Lake. Environmental education for adults and youth used to be one of our marquee programs. However, in recent years, environmental education was relatively inactive due to the lack of proper leadership. Fortunately, our board member representing the Western Virginia Water Authority has taken the responsibility for educating youth in the Roanoke area, as well as Franklin County, on how your actions and activities impact our environment. SMLA is grateful to have Tara Polsing for merging her job responsibilities, expertise, and educational practices in with SMLA's mission. During the past year and due to COVID restrictions, Tara delivered her message on Facebook and the SMLA's website. Her videos on what happens on the watershed affects water, erosion, and another on pollutants are clear examples of how SMLA can impact the behavior of both our children and adults as well. Take a look at them. I think you'll be impressed. This year, Tara looks forward to resuming live training activities, and we're extremely glad to have her. One of my neighbors experienced this view from their backyard in a canal community located south of Virginia Beach. And we don't want to duplicate this here. Improperly maintained and malfunctioning septic systems along the lakeshore can severely damage water quality, leading to unhealthy drinking water, dangerous swimming, and other water recreation. And this can greatly affect your property values. This year, Joanne Haupt has volunteered to lead our septic education program, the intent of which is to raise awareness, provide state and county guidance, and promote compliance with the code. SMLA is collaborating with the Virginia and county departments of health to convey septic considerations for home buyers and sellers and septic guidance for homeowners. It's really important to know what you have and how to maintain it. Joanne has just published her first of several upcoming articles to raise septic system awareness. Find it in our most recent newsletter, our Facebook page, and website. These two websites provide the fundamental knowledge on septic systems you need. Well, does this picture look familiar? Yes, it is the same picture I use for septic system education. This photo can also illustrate the result of directly pumping marine heads or onboard toilets into the lake. It's no different than a leaking septic system, but it may be worse. Dangerous E. coli, phosphorus, and nitrogen all enter the lake in high concentrations, causing disease, discolored, smelly water, uncontrollable algal blooms, and a strong resistance by residents and visitors to return to the contaminated area, meaning the lake. How do you think this would affect the economy and property values? The Virginia Department of Health, the Tri-County Lakes Administrative Commission, and the SMLA team annual provide free marine head pump outs from May to September when these boats are occupied more often. During 2020, the program pumped out over 5,700 gallons of raw sewage from 263 separate pump out operations. Total expenditures for the 2020 season were about $16,000, about half of what it normally is because of the COVID restrictions. And that was paid by a 75% grant from the Virginia Department of Health, and SMLA picks up the other 25%. TLAC supplied administrative and personnel support. The 2021 season for a vessel pump out program, this year led by George Morrison, is scheduled to start around May 15th, 2 weekends before Memorial Day weekend. I urge all that have marine heads or know someone that has one to use this service to protect our water. Many homeowners are thrilled to see their grass grow right down to the riprap. You can observe these homes all over the lake. Would you believe it if I told you that your grass is a key contributor to polluting the lake? Unfortunately, grass growing down to our riprap provides a runway for pollutants and contaminants to flow directly into our lake water. The US EPA has reported that runoff from lawns, roads, and rooftops is the primary cause of pollution in our waterways. The extra fertilizer from lawns, oil, and gas from driveways, pesticides, herbicides, salts, litter, and soil from construction sites are polluting our lake, causing algae blooms, turbidity, or cloudiness in the water. Fertilizers directly contribute to algae growth. Now, what if I told you that 1 pound of phosphorus in runoff can result in 500 pounds in algae growth? What about the other herbicides and pesticides that you're using to make your yard the envy of the neighborhood? The easiest path for these bad actors to access our pristine water is across our grass. Now, as algae die, they decompose. They consume dissolved oxygen in the water to the detriment of the fish that need it. Have you ever heard of a fish kill? This can surely do it. Erosion runoff can cause turbidity, which reduces the amount of light penetrating the water. This inhibits growth of native aquatic plants that fish depend on. Actually, in the summer, the situation is exacerbated due to warmer water, which leads to oxygen deprivation. Impacts of climate change can be dramatic here. An easy step you as a homeowner can take to protect our lake is to plant a buffer garden at your shoreline. As you ride around the lake, take note of our neighbors who have planted natural gardens along the shoreline that has trees, shrubs, and perennials beautifully planted. Areas like these serve as a filter for runoff, catching sediment, debris, and pollutants before they reach the lake. At this point, you're probably saying to yourself, the buffer garden sounds quite cumbersome and costly. There are a number of options for buffer gardening. Some can be costly, others are not. But keep in mind that buffer gardens do not require permitting by AEP. If you have native vegetation along your shoreline, consider yourself fortunate. A mature native buffer represents many years of nature working and discourages undesirable non-native plants and animals while attracting songbirds, butterflies, turtles, and frogs. If you have a lawn to the water's edge, a simple, no-cost way to restart restoring your shoreline is to stop mowing 10 to 12 feet strip next to the riprap. Seeds in the soil will germinate and valuable native plants will begin to reappear. For a more active approach to restore your shoreland, you can replant native trees, shrubs, grasses, and wildflowers. The area where water runs off your property is the best location to start planting. You can create a natural, appealing waterfront landscape while eliminating expensive and time-consuming lawn care. For design maintenance or design assistance, the SMLA Buffer Landscape Volunteers, made up of Virginia Master Naturalists and Virginia Master Gardeners, will work with homeowners to develop garden plans and design to manage erosion and provide a natural buffer that will keep harmful sediment and pollutants out of our lake. It's an easy, collaborative, and free conversation with the homeowner. The homeowner tells us what they want, and our volunteers simply provide helpful recommendations. You are in charge. It may be difficult for some of you to visualize what a proper buffer garden looks like. Well, with AEP support, SMLA has signed on to create a buffer pilot project at Mariners Landing, located on the 5th tee on their golf course, right on the water. The pilot project will demonstrate design features. You get an idea of what goes where, native plant selection, see the beauty of our native species, and an estimated cost for a 12 by 60 plot, so you have an idea of the cost range. We'll announce project completion, at which time we urge you to come by on your boat to see the garden and its beauty. Okay, now I have several questions for you. First, what type of boat? What type of boat is associated with the highest number of deaths? If you guessed a bow rider, you would be correct. And we have a lot of these on Smith Mountain Lake. Last year was the busiest boating season ever seen on Smith Mountain Lake. Boat rentals were completely booked, and in some cases, new owners can expect to wait 2 years for a new boat to be delivered. A lot of new boaters are coming to the lake. Here's another question. What action causes the greatest number of deaths in boating incidents? You think it's boat sinking, collisions, capsizing, towing somebody? No, actually, it's when somebody simply falls overboard. Third question, what type of boat do you think is related to the highest fatality rate per incident? Oddly enough, it's not a bow rider. And actually, there are two, kayaks and john boats. You know, the kind that your kids and grandkids play in all the time. Finally, what is the common thread in these three instances? Here's a hint. What don't people wear in 90% of the fatalities? They're not wearing a life jacket. Our first death at Smith Mountain Lake this year was a 35-year-old that fell out of a fishing boat near a ramp with no life jacket. 9 out of 10 fatalities are caused when people fall out of the boat, get in an accident, in john boat, kayak, and they're not wearing a life jacket. How many people do you see on paddleboards that don't wear a life jacket? The Water Safety Council, chaired by Pat Massa, is Smith Mountain Lake Association's recreation arm that cooperates and coordinates with law enforcement, local and state government agencies, boating safety organizations, marinas, fire and rescue departments, commercial ventures, and citizens. As you can see by this slide, a lot of people are on the council. The Water Safety Council is instrumental in educating, maintaining both safety and responsible operation and water activities on the lake. The council's focus is safety through education. Their mission is to promote safe boating, water sports, and lakefront living through education, training, and interagency program coordination. The Water Safety Council financially and logistically supports established safety programs in our community, such as online and in-person boater education courses. One is being taught this evening, actually. Courtesy boat safety inspections. Boating Safety Week is May 22nd through the 28th, and the Water Safety Council will offer vessel inspections possibly on both weekends. Of course, the No Wake 4th of July fireworks, a pivotal event that significantly reduced nighttime boating accidents, and the Children's Awards at Hot Shots Mini Golf for being cited wearing a life jacket by council members. The council is currently participating in a wake control study by TLAC's Navigation Committee. Please note and understand that SMLA is not necessarily against wake surfing, but the high wakes that these boats create can cause damage to shoreline, which can lead to environmental damage to the lake, damage to docks, and swimmer safety issues. All frustrating issues to residents that could possibly lead to lower property values. The Wake Responsibly poster that you can see here, unfortunately hidden by some of the folks, was prepared by the Water Sports Industry Association, comprised of boat builders and water sports providers. The poster reflects their recommendation for wake surfing, specifically to stay at least 200 feet away, keeping music at reasonable levels. Sound really does travel long distances on the water. I'm sure you've recognized that. And minimizing repetitive passes. Floating obstacles can be a boater's worst nightmare. Hitting a tree, piece of lumber, or even a plastic bag can disable or severely damage a boat. Additionally, windblown trash and debris collects in the coves and on the shorelines, creating hazardous and unsightly conditions. AEP has a responsibility to remove hazards to navigation in open waters and to remove material that results in adverse aesthetic impacts. Appalachian Power Lake Crews remove a record of 10,417 tons of debris from Smith Mountain Lake in 2020 due to 3 high water events. This shattered the previous mark of 2019 of 5,700 tons. So basically twice the record was set last year. But due to difficulty of access, AEP cannot clear the hundreds of coves in Smith Mountain Lake. And this is where our volunteers come in. For the past 34 years, TLAC, the Smith Mountain Regional Chamber of Commerce, and Smith Mountain Lake Association, along with our supporting sponsors, coordinate the Take Pride in Smith Mountain Lake cleanup event. For the May 2019 event, over 42 tons of debris were removed from 101 miles of cove shoreline in the lake through the efforts of 326 dedicated volunteers like you. Last year, when COVID restrictions prevented a normal Take Pride event, SMLA alone sponsored a modified cleanup plan with the communities leading, planning, and coordinating their own event. This year, Take Pride will follow that model for any day they choose in May. Of course, gloves and bags will be provided to registered communities, as well as reimbursement for the dumpster that is contracted. Individuals and groups may assist these communities by contacting those that have registered. Registered communities and their contacts will be listed on the organization's website and Facebook page. On your way up to Bay Rock Marina, you may have observed the shoal marker that looks a little bit different. That is the top of an abandoned and derelict vessel. While an ADV may look ominous or at least curious, it is also a source of pollution with the potential for leaking gas and oil. With increased numbers of boats and especially fiberglass boats, ADVs have been on the rise. The short story is that the vessels sink or are abandoned in shallow water, and the owners don't have the means to recover them. Most boater insurance does not cover it. Laws exist, but in many cases, the authorities cannot or will not enforce them. Expenses are significant. Fiberglass is not easily disposed of. SMLA and Water Safety Council members Neil Sturman and Neil Harrington have taken up the banner to inventory our 15 or so ADVs on Smith Mountain Lake. There are many more in the state. They are now participating in a newly created multi-agency state-level working group whose mission is to identify the roadblocks for safe and reasonable removal of these vessels. Issue-specific subcommittees have been formed and they meet monthly. Progress is being made, but slowly. The final report of the subcommittee is due out in August or September. Keep an eye out for more on this matter. For more information on this subject, look at Longwood's Clean Virginia Waterways website on ADVs as listed on the slide. "2021 marks our 35th year of monitoring the water quality of Smith Mountain Lake. Our team consists of 55 volunteers, along with students and staff from Ferrum College's Environmental Sciences Department. Using their own boats and gas, volunteers monitor and sample 84 locations every 2 weeks during the summer months. Data is collected for water clarity, algae populations, phosphorus, bacteria. Ferrum conducts additional monitoring for temperature, pH, and dissolved oxygen. Many of these parameters are tabulated into a trophic index that provides a big picture of the lake's health, which at this time is good, and good water supports high property values. Individual readings such as bacteria can be used to alert the public regarding unhealthy conditions in specific areas. While specific parameter data collected each year is important, more important are the trends seen over a period of 10 years or more. These trends can be used by local and state authorities to take action to address the stressor. During the COVID restricted 2020, water quality monitoring went on without a hitch, as monitors were from the same family by and large, so social distancing was not really an issue. During our 12-week monitoring, only one testing period had locations where E. coli levels exceeded Department of Health standards for recreational waters. And this event was preceded by heavy rainfall, which flushes nutrients from tributaries and shorelines. Algae samples are composed of diatoms, green algae, and blue-green algae. The 2-year trend has showed a dramatic increase last year in green algae, which impairs water quality. As you know, and as you all have observed, water quality was not good last year. As a matter of fact, the water clarity in 2020 was the worst that we've seen in the last 20 years. While green algae percentages go up, water quality goes down. Also contributing to this decline was a dramatic increase in watercraft traffic all week long, not just on the weekends anymore. Studies on water quality and clarity find that in heavily trafficked waterways, boats have a noticeable negative impact. Blue-green algae was present, but at a low 13%, and the vast majority of the blue-green algae found in the lake are not likely to produce toxins. While phosphorus levels were down from last year, they were still above the 5, 10, and 20-year averages. We should all continue to make efforts to reduce the amount of phosphorus entering the lake, since it is a major contributor to algae. As the season closed last year, a smartphone-enabled algae reporting tool was created to offer residents and other users the ability to document, photograph, and report algae blooms. Samples taken are analyzed by Ferrum scientists to determine their type, and trends of sightings will be formulated. The tool can be found on the SMLA website, and we'll be integrating our tool with the Virginia Department of Health reporting system. For the coming year, Ferrum College and SMLA are looking at opportunities that will use remote sensing to help understand and solve lake problems. Tom Hardy, our Water Quality Monitor Director, and Ferrum are exploring other opportunities to expand our summer monitoring to other seasons as well. For those that wish to volunteer in water sampling, there are sites near Bayrock Marina that need volunteers. If interested, please contact our SMLA office. So where does all that road water and farm field water go? Road oils and contaminants, excess farm fertilizer that isn't properly captured, and neighborhood property runoff all end up in storm drains, most of which flows into streams, and all the streams flow into the lake. Save Our Streams, led by Jeff Orth, is a local chapter of Virginia Save Our Streams. 3 to 4 person teams of certified monitors measure pollution tolerant and intolerant benthic organisms or bugs, the combination of which determines the relative health of the stream. Water quality is checked in up to 18 lake tributaries twice each year. For 2019, 10 of 16 sites were rated as fully acceptable. Results were shared with the Department of Environmental Quality as it serves to alert adjacent counties and states to impending problems upstream. After COVID required canceling the 2020 monitoring season, the Save Our Streams is eager to return to a full schedule this spring, and over a dozen new monitors are beginning training. 2 streams, the Magotty Creek and Gills Creek, were recently sampled and both scored excellent on quality. Annual reports that show both annual sampling results and recent trends may be viewed on SMLA's website. All lake residents should be interested in these results. While not quite as obvious, the results of these tests can have a direct impact on their property values. AEP's priority responsibility is to operate the Smith Mountain project to generate power. And in doing so, AEP has a number of plans used to help manage these operations. Since water is the primary generator of power, the water management plan is the key to their operations, yet it considers the impacts of power generation operations with regard to lake level. About every 6 years, low rainfall produces low water levels in Smith Mountain Lake, below 793 feet, that lasts for several months. And about every 10 years, high rainfall produces high water levels above 795 feet that last for several days, like we experienced last year. However, over the long term, this plan has proven generally effective. This plan is reviewed every 5 years, and Smith Mountain Lake Association has a seat at the table to review it, offering comments and recommendations. Last fall, after the high water event, Smith Mountain Lake Association co-hosted the AEP information webinar to educate the public on dam operations and plan features. The plan is now out for review, and SMLA will be involved. SMLA's lead technical advisor, Chuck Sinex, and others will review the AEP water management plan and ensure our members' and residents' concerns are addressed. Routinely, Chuck, who has significant modeling experience, tests alternative water level models and offers suggestions to dam operations that might minimize water level fluctuations. So you want to surprise your child with an aquarium here at the lake. Great. You buy the fish, the equipment, and the moss for a realistic setting. Then your child decides that they don't want to take care of it anymore. Sound familiar? So you sell off the equipment, the fish have likely died off, and you choose to throw the algae into the lake. You may have just inoculated the lake with zebra mussels, and you also might be subjected to a fine of $25,000. The moss may have been sold with the invasive zebra mussel embedded in it. This is an actual story, was in the news a couple months ago and demonstrates how easy it is to unknowingly transport and introduce invasive species. And they are extremely difficult, if not impossible for some, to extract them once they are here. Some invasive plant species have already been introduced to Smith Mountain Lake, including hydrilla and Eurasian milfoil, both of which have been known to contribute to lower property values in some Northeast lakes. Smith Mountain Lake Association has worked with the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources to control infestation by stocking the lake with a variety of sterile carp that feed voraciously on these grassy pests. Bill Butterfield is now the Invasive Species Committee Chair, and he points out that several other invasive species are knocking at our door, including didymo, or rock snot, an unsightly slime, proper name, that attaches to rocks in the bottom. Alabama black bass have been found in Lake Gaston, Claytor Lake, and Philpott Lake. Their aggressive nature threatens established population of game fish here at our lake. Snakehead fish, which you've probably heard of, already in Virginia and North Carolina water bodies, are also very aggressive. Asian carp are moving east from Midwest water bodies. Some of the other duties assigned include participation on AEP technical committees, such as the Aids to Navigation Committee, Aquatic Vegetation, Debris Committee, Erosion Sedimentation, Habitat Committee, Recreation, and Water Quality Committee. SMLA also participates on TLAC committees, including membership on the TLAC Board of Directors and the Vessel Pump Out Committee. Who provides comments on the Mountain Valley Pipeline construction documentation to ensure that plans minimize sedimentation and erosion impacts on Smith Mountain Lake water? We do. We also monitor the impacts of their operations in the streams adjacent to their construction sites. Smith Mountain Lake Association has recently updated the popular Smith Mountain Lake map to include new communities, roads, businesses, and marinas. It should be available within a week or so. Finally, you need to obtain a copy of our new brochure entitled Protecting Your Waterfront Investment, 10 Simple Shoreland Practices. It describes what you can do as a homeowner to protect the water of Smith Mountain Lake. And for the folks that have seen it, we've gotten great feedback on it. You should get it, a copy of it. Now you've heard who we are, what we do, what our plans are, and why you should care. You now know that membership in Smith Mountain Lake Association is the best insurance for protecting your waterfront investment. So what can you do? If you aren't a member already, please join us. Every membership directly supports our mission. If you are, please renew your membership. You'll be receiving an SMLA window sticker in your renewal announcement. Help us in any way that you can. Volunteer to serve on one of our committees or projects that are currently planned. As I said, leadership is always needed, whether it be for a project or for the board of directors. It is so important to practice what we are preaching. Follow the tips in our new brochure will contribute greatly to protecting the water of Smith Mountain Lake. Finally, please spread the word, the good words about SMLA's great efforts to sustain the lake. We work hard to accomplish our mission, and we need additional members to support both ongoing and unfunded projects. Each membership contributes to the SMLA mission. We need you now more than ever. Help us preserve our greatest treasure, Smith Mountain Lake, the jewel of the Blue Ridge. Be a steward of the lake and join our team. Thank you for your time and attention. SMLA and I are proud to serve you. Now on to questions. If you have submitted a question via chat on your screen, our panel of project chairs will respond accordingly. You may still submit a question and we'll respond as time permits. Regardless, all the questions will be answered and provided in an email to all registrants as well as our entire membership. So, Mike, on to you with the first question.
Yes, John, we've gotten 3 questions so far. Question 1 is recently we have seen increased chlorophyll A levels, an indication of algae growth, and decreased water clarity. What can we do to reverse this trend? And we're going to pass that to Tom Hardy and Bob Hastings. John.
Tom?
Okay, this is Tom Hardy. First of all, let me say I'm pleased to see that people are actually reading the annual water quality report that we post on our Lake Association website. I encourage everybody to do so. There's a lot of information in there. I think John touched on a lot of this already, but you know, if we want to look at the causes of this decreased clarity and increased chlorophyll, Obviously, the extra boating traffic we've been experiencing in recent years that's eroding the shore and stirring up sediment tends to introduce more nutrients into the water and increase the algae growth. The increased temperatures, as well as the rain events we've been experiencing lately. But the question is, what can we do about these things? And there's not much we can do about increased temperatures and increased rain, but there's some things we can do to maybe mitigate the impact of those things. Certainly, my focus is on monitoring the situation and trying to identify the sources of some of this increased algae or sediment that's running into the lake. I am pleased to announce, John mentioned this already, but as of yesterday, we've gone live with NOAA satellite images, which is going to enable us to see any places where there's an increased concentration of algae and get somebody out there in a hurry to identify that, what type of algae it is, and hopefully locate the source of what's causing that and maybe be able to mitigate that somehow. In addition, we also have an algae reporting tool on the Lake Association website. We've gotten a few reports from people that have observed what they can consider to be algae. In some cases, it's tree pollen. In the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of tree pollen falling in the water. That happens every spring at this time. But if we can, identify specific locations where people are seeing algae, we can get out there once again and sample it and hopefully identify the source of that. One of the key things that is contributing to this, as I mentioned, is nutrients washing into the lake where the land interfaces with the water. And I'm going to pass this over to Bob Hastings to talk about what we can do there to mitigate nutrients washing off the land into the water.
Thanks, Tom. Good evening, everybody. Tom is a little bit more politically correct than I am when he talks about nutrients entering the waterway. I'm going to call them herbicides, pesticides, any runoff that comes from lawns, roads, rooftops. And John Rupnick mentioned it earlier, but our grass that we're so proud of provides a runway for all of these pollutants to come from either our yard or our roof or whatever and get into our waterway. It's fertilizer, it's oil, it's gas, it's pesticides, you name it, and they are polluting our lake. They get a real smooth track on that grass, and it causes explosive growth in algae. As the algae die, they decompose, they consume, dissolves oxygen in the water, which is a detriment to fish and other organisms that need it. And it causes cloudiness, it reduces the amount of light penetrating the water, and this inhibits growth of aquatic plants that fish depend on. I want to really emphasize the fact that Smith Mountain Lake is not immune to this. Yes, we have a beautiful, pristine water in our lake, but we can learn from examples that are going on in other lakes. The Land O'Lakes, Minnesota, over the past half century, quaint lakeside cabins have been transformed by the thousands into mega homes where people are fertilizing lawns and running grass right down to the water's edge. And these lakes have really become a nutrient soup that's quite literally suffocating fish and other native species within them. It's so bad in Lake Mille-Lac up in Minnesota that they actually had to halt walleye fishing. So it's bad there. And with respect to Virginia, 2 years ago, the Virginia Department of Health issued an advisory for Lake Anna due to the toxic algae bloom. And with this advisory, the Virginia Department of Health warned that people and pets should not be swimming or drinking for the pet's sake, the water. It can kill pets. So we all need to join hands in this endeavor. At Smith Mountain Lake, we've seen a rise in phosphorus levels over 100% since 2012. And the only way this lake is getting phosphorus is by way of fertilizer. So food for thought. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with everybody. Thank you.
John, the second question is, can you explain the relationship between the Smith Mountain Lake Association and TLAC, the Tri-County Lakes Administrative Commission? John, would you take that?
Absolutely. Those that are listening out there, believe me, you're not the only ones. It took me about 4 years to figure out the difference. Simply, SMLA is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. TLAC is a quasi-governmental organization. They were created with the support of SMLA way back when it became apparent that because the lake is managed and owned by the 3 counties, it's not a typical lake where one county owns the entire lake. 3 counties own the lake. So they have the board of supervisors, and each got together and first created the policy advisory board, and then from that created TLAC. So TLAC is run by an executive director, actually in the same building where we're located on Scruggs Road. They have a couple administrative assistants, and they have a board of directors, of which we do sit on, as well as the board of supervisor representatives from the counties. And they respond and create, they respond to the AEP's requirements as per their license. And then they also create policy to help manage the lake. Again, SMLA contributes to that because we do sit on their board, but we are totally different. One is a nonprofit, the other one is governmental. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, John. Next is 2 very similar questions I'm going to combine and ask that you start with this and then ask other panelists to join in. The first question was, who controls the placement of no wake zones? And the second one related was, what is this organization's stance on the proposed no wake buoys related specifically to wake surfing?
First question is relatively easy. TLAC, again, because they create policy, they're the ones that field the forms, or not questionnaires, they field the applications to establish a no wake cove. Then just in short, no wake coves, there are no new no wake coves as there had been created in the past. So those that have no wake coves are grandfathered in, and they will stay as long as the communities want them. Any new no wake coves really have to do with whether or not there's a marina with gas and it creates a hazardous situation. Now, the second part of that question, we're starting a new era, and that is no wake surfing coves. There's a slight difference, but yet the practice, if in fact it is approved, will supposedly be the same. SMLA doesn't have a stance on this right now, because the recommendation has not yet gone to the TLAC board of directors. Right now, it's still in the navigation committee. Once the recommendation is submitted, the Smith Mountain Lake Association board of directors will field it, discuss it at length, look at the pros and cons, and come up with our recommendation. I think it's premature to state a Smith Mountain Lake Association stance on this subject. It has caused some problems, like I mentioned, but our Water Safety Council is a big believer on multi-use lakes. Now it's just a matter of how we can do it safely, and that is the discussion at hand in this committee. Mike?
Okay. John, the next question was, has anybody corresponded with lawn care companies in addition to garden shops regarding phosphorus and other pollutants? You want to start with that?
I'll start with it, but I'll turn it back over to Bob. Yesteryear, and I'm talking 15, 20 years ago, we did get out to the garden centers and promoted the use of low and no phosphorus fertilizers. Our staff members, board members, went person to person to each of these garden centers to do that. And someone reminded me just recently that it just might be a good idea to do that again. Bob, do you have anything to add to that?
Is the fact that in 2011, the governor of Virginia signed into law prohibiting the use of phosphorus in lawn fertilization in Virginia. Now, there are special circumstances that would allow an individual to use this, but as a general law in the state, we are not to be using phosphorus in our fertilizer. Now, many of you may go into your local hardware store or landscape business, and you will see phosphorus in some of the fertilizers that they sell. I would encourage all of you to mention that to the ownership of these establishments, that we are engaged participants in keeping the waters of Smith Mountain Lake pristine, and we don't appreciate them selling fertilizers that contain phosphorus. Back to you, John.
Thanks, Bob.
John, the next question was, Dr. Heck of Ferrum College told me that a lot of the water quality issues are due to upstream agriculture. What is being done to work with farmers upstream to keep fertilizer and sediment out of the streams?
I don't know how old that statement is. I do know that from personal experience, several big farms are taking action to reduce their runoff. I mean, I personally visited the Homestead Creamery Farm and discussed it with the owner, and he brought me out to the field and described the process that he uses to both fertilize and kill plants at the end of their useful life and prevent the sediments and chemicals from moving down into the streams. I was so impressed with that presentation that I knew that anybody that is a responsible farmer is going to follow similar practices. The problem may be that a lot of these farms aren't quite as large and maybe not quite as responsible. So the Save Our Streams organization does monitor the runoff, and with a sighting of pollution tolerant benthic organisms, they report this to DEQ, the local departments of health, and they're the ones that have to go and look at the properties upstream to find the owners of that property and ensure that the swales are properly maintained, the runoff is properly channeled and filtered. Jeff, do you have anything to add to that? Jeff Orth.
No, I don't, John. But as John mentioned here, the data that we send in when we monitor the 18 tributaries that flow into the lake is part of the Department of Environmental Quality's permanent database. They are reviewing that constantly, and where they see trends in a given area or on a given stream, they zero in on the source of those problems, and they do address them with the landowner.
Thank you, Jeff. Michael?
John, we have two more questions. The first one is for Bob Hastings. We're concerned about what seems to be increased silting in the coves, making some waterfront homes inaccessible by watercraft. And they asked for our thoughts on that.
Yeah, y'all have heard my thoughts with respect to the importance of buffer gardening or buffer landscaping as it relates to controlling the bad chemicals, fertilizers, et cetera, that get into the water. Silting certainly is a result of this. So I hate to be repetitive, but you can take what I said a minute ago and repeat it with respect to silting. Now, there is an impact with respect to boat traffic, wakes, and erosion that will cause not necessarily silting, but it'll cause cloudiness in the water as well. So I can turn it back to one of my fellow panelists if they'd like to provide any more insight into that.
I'll chime in here a little bit. I think the question is really targeted at a fairly large amount of siltation that comes in, and also that which is shifted around. You know that when you go upstream to Bay Rock or Ponderosa, you often may even run aground because the silt moves, the high silt moves from year to year, and depending on what the currents have been and the rainfall has been. Anything upstream that brings down silt definitely comes into the lake, and it settles when the water gets calm. And that's why those 2 points that I mentioned tend to get silty more often. Now, if you're talking about some of the coves in the lower lake, now you're talking what Bob was mentioning, runoff from streams, runoff from properties, and also earth shifting around from high wakes that hit the shoreline, bring the dirt from the shoreline into the center of the channel. If you go to the S-turns and you look at the I'll call them the cliffs, the red clay cliffs, that's all because of erosion, and all that dirt that was part of the island there at the beginning of the S-turn is now at the bottom of our channel and filling up. So it is an issue. The AEP does have a erosion sedimentation committee that works on that issue, and they deal with it every year. But and they do have dredging capability for some of the smaller channels, and dock owners. Of course, we're in a dredging prohibitive time period right now, but it's relatively short-lived. Short story, bottom line. Mother Earth takes care of the mountains. They degrade the mountains and they bring dirt down to the sea, and that's going to happen. You can channel it. You can possibly stop it with a dam like the Niagara Dam, which now holds PCBs. You don't want to let that thing loose because all the PCBs will end up in our lake. But it also has a lot of silt there, so they have to deal with that. So the nature's course is to move from high ground to low ground, and there's not a whole lot of great technology to change that for a lake this size. Sorry, I'm so long on that. Got time for about one more question, Mike?
John, we have two more because another has come in while you were talking. The first of them was very similar to what you were just talking about, but it specifically asked, will there be any more rip-wrapping of the many islands that are fast eroding? Last summer's high boat traffic really affected the islands, which are a huge recreational benefit to the community. So you were talking about that, but specifically was asking if you knew of any more rip-wrapping that would occur on those islands.
Did I see a note that Tara, you had some thoughts on this? Or is that
Sorry,
somebody?
that was for an earlier question.
Okay. We know that AEP is concerned about the islands. They rip-wrap several, want to do several more when the budget permits. They've also asked us to do island monitoring for bacteria and the like for people that are staying overnight on there. So this is a requirement that we do every couple of years. AEP has the responsibility for those islands.
Okay, John, the last question is a pretty technical question. I'm just going to pass it straight to Tom without even really trying to read it, but it's asking about some monitoring technology. Tom, you want to give a shot at that?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot with the disclaimer that I'm no expert and I have not stayed in a Holiday Inn, but I'm not aware of a direct way to differentiate. So the question is around the Secchi disk readings measure the total light attenuation. So what we do is we lower a disk into the water and see how deep we can lower it before we can no longer see this disk. And that gives an indication of the clarity of the water. The question is, can we separate, I believe the question anyhow is, can we separate how much of that is due to algae and how much of that is due to just dissolved minerals, sediment in the water? We don't currently measure that distinction between algae versus sediment. There's ways you can infer that by looking at trends in the clarity of the water overall and also trends in the concentration of algae in the water. So we do have ways of measuring the concentration of algae in the water, and that's one of the things we do measure through not only through the chlorophyll measurements that our water sampling does throughout the summer. Last year, we did manage to get a loaner of a digital monitoring device that you could lower in the water that would you could use to measure the concentration of algae and the water clarity at various depths throughout the water. We have not, we're still analyzing those results and not sure that we're getting useful information out of that experiment. But so I guess I would say, I don't think we can measure with great precision what you're looking for here, but I think we can get indications just by looking at the measurements that we already have regarding chlorophyll and water clarity.
I think the example is the increase in chlorophyll A last year versus the year before, and the increased boater traffic did cause a decrease in water clarity.
Yeah. So obviously they're correlated.
Okay, I see one more question. I'll take it. It's not really a question, it's more of a statement, and that is construction upstream is going to add sediment to the lake, and that's a fact. We are monitoring Mountain Valley Pipeline's progress or lack of the rules, restrictions, regulations, environmental impact statements, draft environmental impact statements. We generally get to comment them, look at them, and provide our suggestions. This community has a lot to say about this, and it's definitely more than our voice that's driving the train. So, but we add to it, and we're happy to do so. And like I said earlier, when they do have a construction project like at Maggotty Creek, we were there above and below the construction site, looking at the sediment that was created. All right. I appreciate everybody's time. I am 2 minutes over my allotted time. It's 7:03. I promised to be done in an hour. I don't want to extend this any longer. I relish the participation, the questions, they're great. Thanks to my panel members for responding really well. And I urge all of you, like I said earlier, please join, or please renew, or get somebody else to join in, because your memberships directly contribute to our mission, and our mission directly contributes to your ability to protect your waterfront investment. Thank you very much all, and have a good evening, and happy Earth Day. Plant a tree. Good night.